And Snapchat just introduced this sort of seamless habit that people have to naturally communicate with each other without having the archive of it. Now, why is this unique? Well, in this room, we are the ones who are going to brands every single day and saying, get online, get a website, get on social media. I believe that transformation actually happens one place first, and that's in your internal organization. And that it's very hard for you to project the spirit of business transformation if you yourself are running your businesses on BlackBerry and Lotus Notes, if you know what I'm saying. And you see this a lot where people think they're being all that transformative, but they themselves aren't leveraging the tools within their organization to actually help them actually transform and communicate and connect to customers. So you have this first little pig, which is how do you, one, transform? The second little pig is how do you innovate? And this is also an area that very much gets sort of under my skin. We were having lunch and talking about this among some of the speakers and guests here. And there's this idea that the best way that you innovate in marketing today is to create a better mousetrap. So instead of doing a TV commercial, I'm going to do a viral video on YouTube, and that's the way we're going to innovate. And I actually don't believe that to be true. I think what digital has done to marketing enables you to do things in which you could never have done before through these digital channels. So when I talk about to innovate from a marketing perspective, I'm not talking about better, clever, more impressive advertising. What I'm actually talking about is something I explain to people as digital grilled cheese sandwiches. Now, what do I mean by that? There is this legendary tale, and I don't know if it's true or not, I've only been around about 2 years, that Kraft went to JWT with these cute little square processed cheese pieces of orange, I guess it's food, we'll call it food. And they said to them, we want you, JWT, to come back to us with a really catchy campaign ad. You got to frame yourself back in this time, right? Like this is sort of this is the time when we were putting out ads that said things like 9 out of 10 doctors recommend Marlboro cigarettes. Like it was crazy back then. It wasn't even like transparency, like forget about it, right? And so this story goes that JWT came back to Kraft with this idea for the grilled cheese sandwich. Right? We're going to take 2 pieces of white bread that all these good American people are eating. We're going to take these American singles or Kraft singles if you live outside of the US, and we're going to put it in between, lather it with butter, put it on a nice frying pan, and fantastic, what a delicious treat we're going to have. And we all know what happened. It worked pretty well. We still eat them today. Some of us still actually give it to kids. That's the sort of thing that we do. And if you were to modernize that and think, what's a modern version of a grilled cheese sandwich? I would argue that actually, I think iTunes is a great example of a digital grilled cheese sandwich. It's a new product or service that's introduced that leverages the legacy line of whatever it is they're creating, whether it's computers, tablets, phones, watches, it doesn't matter. And they're also creating, through this new product or service that is digital, a way to communicate, to connect. They're creating new revenue streams, and it's very, very dynamic if you have to actually start peeling beneath it. And so you could look at any sort of component within your organization and see opportunities where you don't just have to advertise a new product or service. You could use digital to actually be the product or service, or you could add in a product or service on top of what it is you're trying to release to sort of push things forward. So to me, that's innovation, the second little pig. The third little pig is to transact. Now, I'm very tempted as a digital guy to put e-commerce there, but like e-commerce to me feels really old after 15, 20 years of it being in market. And I also think that e-commerce as a general sort of halo is very highly misinterpreted by most brands today. Brands today look at this and go, great, e-commerce is fantastic, Mitch, but like 0.5% of the people who come to our site convert. You've heard all these data points, right? What happens here is that what brands don't realize is that that's the macro conversion, right? Getting people to actually buy from you. There's tons of these micro conversions, as my friend Avinash Kaushik, who's the analytics or digital marketing evangelist at Google, a friend of mine, talks about. And if you look at things like, what are my micro conversions that actually lead to that macro conversion? They buy from me, or even if you don't have e-commerce, they order from me, or they engage with me. There's many. I think a transaction is someone gave you their email address. I think a transaction is someone watched one of your videos. I think a transaction is you have more information than you did before, besides just blasting a message out into the world where you don't even know if they had the impression or not. And we've started seeing a lot of very interesting pieces of data come together when you start analyzing things. So one of my favorite stories is I was in New York doing an event for Google, and they brought in their 300 largest education clients. So places like Columbia and Phoenix and all the other bigger educational facilities that advertise with them. And my buddy Avinash had done this test. And so what's the macro conversion? What's the e-commerce? What's the ordering on a education site? Someone registers, right, for a course or for a program. And what he did is he realized that it's interesting that if somebody comes onto the site, watches the video, and then signs up for the e-newsletter, there was like an 80+% chance for this site of getting the macro conversion. But if he looked to see where the spend was happening, it was nowhere near there. They weren't paying attention to that video that they just posted once, and they really weren't doing all that much dynamic with the newsletter. That's a fascinating thing, that we look at transactions typically as this big thing that they finally buy from us, when in reality the transactions are minor and small. Now, if you take these three little pigs and look at them, you have one, the ability to create this sort of disruption, if you will, right? This ability to change. That's actually an internal function. Number two is to innovate. The innovation part is what the customer actually sees. And number three, the transaction part, that's actually what they do. They can do something now. And it may seem simplistic to you, but it's actually pretty dramatic to think that as marketing and brand communication leaders, you can have input into all these different components, whereas before we just put a message out there, hope the salespeople did their job, and that hope that somewhere down the line we can validate why we spent all that money. Now that is the true, real transformation. That is the real disruption that's happened. And I think marketers and brand leaders have really done a really poor job of embracing the whole spectrum of things that they can do. But remember, we're here to talk about this consumer. So what happens is when I talk about those three little pigs, people go, oh my God, like how are we ever going to do this? This seems like insurmountable. And the truth is it's very, very large and hard to do. So what I try and tell people is it's actually little things. If you look at it from the perspective of the customer, it's actually these little nuanced things that consumers have done that have changed the way we interact with them. Snapchat is the ability for you and I to agree that we're going to connect, and that if I send you an image or a video, you're going to look at that video, and once you see it, it disappears, unless you're the NSA, then we can talk about that probably another session. Now, we know Snapchat, and a lot of you are raising your hands because of the growth and popularity that it's been experiencing. But I go back to when I first started hearing about Snapchat 2012 to a moment in 2013 when this happened. So this happens in 2013, and basically, I don't know if you remember this moment in time, but when I heard this news, the left side of my body started going numb. I had this sensation that I could smell and taste burnt toast. I was literally stroking out. I couldn't believe this because Snapchat was so new, they had so few employees, there really was no revenue stream. There wasn't even video on Snapchat at the time. And Facebook comes in and says, we want to buy you for $3 billion, and they go, no, we're good. Now, how many of you have a 20, 25-year-old daughter or son, and or you are an uncle or aunt to a 20 or 25? Most of us have this type of age group in our lives. And we'll do supper, let's say a Friday night, and imagine I come home from supper on Friday night and my 25-year-old son or daughter is there, and I go, how does work going with your cute little startup Snapchat with your 8 friends? And they go, Dad, you're not going to believe this. Facebook came to acquire us. You'd be like, this is the greatest day ever. And then they're like, we said no. And you're like, you said no? Well, what was it? Was it not enough money? No, they offered us $3 billion. Now, again, I live in Canada. I'm pretty familiar with our laws down there. I'm sure I'm semi-familiar with the child abuse laws up here in the US too, but we'd have some straps being thrown that night, right? Like, we have to admit that this is a crazy thing, right? And so you see this and you think, this is absurd that at any point in time, any company like this would say no to that amount of money. But if I were to also say to you, put on your marketing and communications and brand and technology brains and tell me, who are the real winners online right now? Who are the winners who are really doing things with content in a dynamic way, in a very sort of forward-thinking way? And I would say the brands that are really nailing this have 3 things going when it comes to the content side of things. One is it is purely image-based. And when I say image, it could be a photo, it could be a video, right? 2 is we know it's what I would call mobile first. What does mobile first mean? Mobile first just means that the experience on your mobile device is better than it is on your desktop or PC. And so if you look at the things that are sort of booming around now, Snapchat would be one, Instagram could be another, Tinder, from what I'm told, would be another. No, I mean, I'm married. My wife doesn't let me date. She's funny like that. But we know that this is what works, right? So it's mobile first, where the mobile experience is better than the web experience. And then the third part is it's social. And when I say social, it's easy to go, well, viral. No, viral, that's a great effect. Social is just whatever thing is being created, I create in a way where the hooks are built in that I can share it and talk about it in the easiest way possible. So would you agree with that, that sort of seems to be the best thing brands can do right now? And so if you think about that as a construct and you go back to when they said actually no, here's what happened. And here's a sort of screenshot of the world. This is November 2013 photo sharing sites. You'll see here that Facebook actually owns 43% of this market. Instagram owns Flickr, what happened to poor little Flickr? Remember Flickr? 1%. People used to come to me like, I've got a great idea for photos. And I was like, are you crazy? Flickr dominates. And it's like 2 minutes later, it's like, what happened to Flickr? And then if you'll see here, 49% is actually Snapchat. Isn't that amazing? So we're sitting here and doing this uncomfortable laugh that Facebook and Snapchat couldn't get a deal done for $3 billion. And the truth is that Facebook knew for a paltry $3 billion, and I don't joke when I say that, for them, they have a massive war chest. This wouldn't be that massive an investment. They could have 100% dominated the exact space that we all agreed is where the winners are today, 3+ years later. And what's amazing about this is that if you fast forward to last week, this is what's happening. Snapchat introduces videos. Facebook have introduced videos. Facebook is doing about 8 billion video views every single day. Snapchat, as of last week, has 8 billion video views every single day. They've literally matched them tail for. Imagine had they actually done the acquisition, close to 20 billion video views a day just by Facebook. Now suddenly they're right in the crosshairs of brands like YouTube and Google and things like that. And so before you ask yourself, well, did Snapchat make a mistake, or are they the future of digital? I want to circle back to this idea of the three little pigs and these nuanced little changes that your customers are making. Because if you think about it, Snapchat introduced something very, very dynamic and new that most people don't even talk about in all of their crazy growth and the excitement that we all have about it. So back in 2012, Snapchat comes out, and I look at it and I'm like, this is really weird. Right? Like I send a picture to you, you look at it and it disappears. What's the point? But what I realized is that what Snapchat had done in a very small, nuanced way is they've introduced a new way in which people communicate online. They introduced something I called back in 2012 the impermanent internet. Now, what does that mean? Right? It means that suddenly Snapchat becomes very replicative of the conversations we have in our day-to-day lives. I was watching all of you here and out there. Some of you were taking selfies and posting to Twitter, fantastic. But the vast majority of the conversations that we've had and interactions we have aren't recorded and then uploaded onto the internet. And Snapchat just introduced this sort of seamless habit that people have to naturally communicate with each other without having the archive of it. Now, why is this unique? Well, in this room, we are the ones who are going to brands every single day and saying, get online, get a website, get on social media, do all this stuff. Why? Because the internet and Google is like an elephant. It never forgets. And if you as a brand are not online, whatever someone searched for, whether it's in a generic search like on Google or in a social space like Twitter where you ask someone, hey, is this brand any good? Whatever comes back is the first brand impression, right? It's positive, negative, or neutral. That's the brand impression. That is what it is. And yet in a small, nuanced way, Snapchat introduced an entirely normal way that we communicate into the digital construct of it, and it's changed the consumers in a very, very powerful way. And so if you sort of start thinking about things, like what's another thing that happened in a small, nuanced way from consumers, ownership became a very big thing in this past short little while. It was not that long ago that Blu-ray came out, and you're like, I just bought the entire Star Wars trilogy on DVD, now I have to buy it all on Blu-ray, thanks, right? And then it switches in a very, very quick way, and suddenly we have streaming. And streaming comes in, and we go, sure, Netflix, no problem, $7, $8, $9 a month, and we suddenly stream, and we all go, great. But there are subtleties underneath it that I don't think we understand that have dramatically changed the way consumers interact with brands and actually how they interact with buying things in general. So if you look at Netflix, here's what we know, right? Netflix has 75+ million subscribers. We know that 10 billion hours are being streamed by it every single month. But here's the big thing about Netflix, no more hard drives. You used to download movies legally or otherwise, and it would fill up your hard drive, and then you would take the jump drive and put it on that and have them there, and then you bought the bigger portable hard drives and you'd put them there, and then you're like, this is too stressful. I'll take an old computer and I'll leave it in my home and I'll make it like at the media center, and we'll use Wi-Fi to connect it, right? It's crazy. And then suddenly this thing comes along and poof, no more hard drives, right? And then one more thing happens that's very, very dramatic. How many of you remember this? On a Friday night, you would go home, you'd have dinner with your family, and then in the middle of winter, you would get in your car and you would drive to the video store, and you'd go up and down the aisles of the video store, and there were no yellow or red tags, and you'd go home with nothing. I'm sure last night, many of you were in bed with your laptops with Netflix on, looking at the selection and going, I don't even know what to choose. There's so much good stuff to watch here. You had analysis paralysis. But what's happened from a small consumer way is that suddenly as a consumer, you're recognizing the amazing power that you have when you're paying for access over ownership. And you're seeing this in music streaming services and beyond and beyond. And there are many instances where this is becoming pretty dramatic. And if you start looking at it even from music streaming services, you can see how much this is impacting. So this piece of data came out while Apple was still testing the subscriptions for their Apple Music service. So this is before the 3-month or whatever it was. We now know, I think it's 15 to 20 million people have subscribed to Apple Music. But look at what's going on here. You already have music streaming services surpassing physical formats. Where I want to end is sort of on a thought for you to have as you move through the next couple of days and today, is we tend to look at this stuff and go, it's complex, there's technology, there's business disruption, there's marketing. I actually think we've had a massive inflection point. And the massive inflection point is this, where technology has removed technology from technology. And that's been the biggest catalyst for brands and marketers have this tremendous opportunity to connect to their consumers. What do I mean by that? So you've got some smartphones there. Where do you keep the instruction manual for your smartphone? Where do you keep that instruction? You're right, you're like, there isn't one, dummy. There's no instruction manual for this thing, right? You turn it on, it goes. My mother turned 75. We bought her an iPad, and I said, Mom, if you can't figure this out, we have to put you down. Well, I've seen videos of cats on YouTube who know how to open the phone and find what they need, right? And so we're seeing this. And so that's the point, is technology has become so intuitive and so easy and natural to use, where these devices are everywhere and connected, that the opportunity is absolutely huge. The other part of it is that brands haven't caught up to how consumers are actually using them in a nuanced way. So this is stuff where we see this data and we go, yeah, we know this. We know that mobile is basically everything, and nobody really cares much for desktop PCs, let alone portable PCs, and we're seeing the stagnation of tablets. And yet I bet if I took every single brand in this room and went on your site on my mobile device, I would be like pinching, and where is this stuff, and why is it there? And you're sitting there going, well, Mitch, we have a long IT roadmap, and it's like 9 months, or we don't have buy-in for mobile, and it's hard to drive. I agree with all that, but the consumer has totally moved on. They have 100% completely moved on to that space. And so I think the big shift we're going to see this year is we're finally going to see, hopefully, brands realize that mobile cannot be a less than web experience. Mobile has to be the ultimate experience, and the web becomes the sort of add-on for it, because we're seeing that it's actually true. IDC reported that mobile is basically the primary device for most consumers, and that the PC has fundamentally been relegated to an accessory device. This isn't new data. This came out in 2013, I think. Right, so the consumer has already decided, and the point is that it's actually not these massive changes that have fundamentally changed the way consumers. It's not that. Consumers have adopted in a very small and nuanced way. I've got tons more examples of this to this. And the problem is that we're sitting there waiting for them all to accumulate and wondering, what are we going to do about it? So before I leave, got a couple seconds here, I'm just going to walk you through a couple of these sort of final thoughts for you to think about as you go through today and tomorrow. One is that I would recommend that instead of just thinking about how much content you're creating to connect to the consumer, think about actually how you distribute that content. So one of the things you heard in the introduction is I've got this blog and podcast called 6 Pixels of Separation. It's hard to get people to come to it. So I do things like I speak at BRITE, I publish in Harvard Business Review, Inc. I try and distribute my content in a way where I can get people to pay attention to me. But obviously for the content to work there, it has to be outside of my walled garden, and it has to be relevant to that audience. It can't be just about how great of an agency Mirium is and please come work with us. So you have to build that through real content. The next thing is think about that the digital marketing innovation stuff, the digital grilled cheese sandwiches. How do you actually build not just campaigns, but is there a revenue stream here? So we're going e-commerce. We're going to sell the stuff we sell in our physical store and just ship it to you. Well, why? If you're doing that already, why not add in digital products and services that you can use to augment that, to get people to be more loyal, more engaged, and connected to you? Back to this idea of mobile. People think mobile, web, TV, terrible. I tell people it's the one-screen world. Screens are everywhere, they're connected, they're ubiquitous, that's it. You don't sit at home watching TV with your right eyeball on your Android device and your left eyeball on the TV. TV, nothing's good, I've got my device. The only screen that matters is the screen that's in front of me. And consumers move through that content, as we know, and brands, unfortunately, aren't. The last thing I would tell you is it's funny, we were having this conversation at lunch, and I was like, that's my closing slide. We live in this crazy world where we make digital look like traditional media, and everything is like impression and GRP based, and Facebook is this big, and Instagram's this big, it's crazy. Facebook may be 5 billion people, or whatever it is, 1.7, or whatever the number is, but the truth is it's a bunch of little things. It's a bunch of people like you are connected in a small way to your 1,000, 2,000 person network. And the true opportunity you have in digital is not to just pump out impressions, but to actually make an impression. And when you do that, you can be your own meme. You can actually be awesome.